Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Today we have Jan Pearson. She is the Dean of the Law School, San Joaquin College of Law. Now, for the record, I must say that I attended San Joaquin College of Law, and I will tell you, I enjoyed the experience. So welcome, Dean.
Glad to be here. Glad to see you.
Yes. You know, I love seeing you too. I do, because I remember torts class when I see you, and I remember the law school. Are you still teaching, by the way?
I am not.
Okay.
Christine Goodrich has taken over teaching torts.
And I had her for a teacher as well in one of my classes. So, you know, I've been gone for a while. So how are things going at the law school?
Well, they're going very well. They're very, very busy. There are so many projects underway. We've remodeled the legal methods class to try and help people with their writing skills. We have the immigration clinic going. The New American Legal Clinic is helping hundreds of people every year. We're trying to get more space for the law school by negotiations with the city of Clovis to purchase the senior center when they build a new senior center a couple of blocks up the street, and that's becoming closer and closer to a reality. So there's plenty to keep me busy even if I'm not teaching.
The building you're in is beautiful, by the way, and so you've been there for a while. Talk about that.
We have been there since 1997.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I remember when I was a student there, I mean, I really enjoyed being in, you know, the historic look of the building.
And when the accrediting entities come to review the law school, the building in and of itself leaves a really positive impression. They look at it and say, well, this looks like a law school, but we've outgrown it. So getting more space is important.
So talk about, you know, the future of the law school. I know that, you know, there's that ABA accreditation that you all are working on, which I hope happens. My fingers are crossed for you on that one. Talk about that.
Well, that's a matter of money. We really have two issues we have to deal with for the school to be ABA. The academic program is fine. We satisfy the bar pass rate for the ABA criteria, but we do need more space. Obtaining the senior center would solve that problem. We have been told that would give us enough space to apply for ABA accreditation. The other big issue is that we need more full-time faculty, and that's a money issue that hopefully we're going to grapple with in a major way over the next 3 years.
So fundraising is going to be big for the next 3 years. Why should the community donate? I mean, give us a reason.
Well, the law school provides a resource for the community. There's so many people that go away to school and then don't return. So unlike other areas, there are jobs in law available in this area. And the people who go to law school, whether they ever practice law or not, become major forces in the community. Pretty much every nonprofit has lawyers on its board because they're attuned to public service. So the law school is a source of intellectual capital for the community. Another way of looking at it is if companies are looking to relocate, they want to locate someplace where there are opportunities for their employees and their employees' families. We have very few higher education opportunities in Fresno. So the law school fills a gap for people who want to expand their skills and get new opportunities in the area.
When I was going to law school, I worked for the city of Fresno, and so I did it in 4 years. But there was an option. I had friends that in 3 years they did it. Some did it in 4 and some did it in 5. Is that still the process? Talk about that.
Yes, that's still the process, although now we technically have a day division where you can take all the classes during the day and complete the degree in 3 years. But it's also still possible, and the majority of people do, complete it in 4 years. And a few, maybe 1 or 2 a year, take 5 years because they have other major family or work commitments.
When I was a student there, we had, I mean, the student body was across the board. You had people who had just graduated from college, and then you had people that came back. This was maybe a second or third career for them. Does that still look that way? And, well, and then I'll ask you another question right after.
Yeah, it does still look that way. I think there are probably more younger people now, but we still have a wide range, probably ages 24 to 55 in every class. If you want to, get a new lease on life and try something new, it really doesn't matter how old you are. What I've told lots of potential applicants is if you go to law school or not, 4 years from now, you're still going to be 4 years older, so you might as well do it if that's your vision of what you want to be.
The income earning capacity, let's talk about that. When someone goes to law school and gets the degree, is the income much higher than not?
Well, it depends on what they were doing before. Any kind of graduate degree is going to increase your earning power. Depending on where you start, I would estimate that starting salaries are somewhere $50,000 to $80,000, depending upon what you choose to do. But really, the sky's the limit. It basically is dependent on how much you're willing to work. One of the other things that's interesting about San Joaquin grads is so many of them open up their own practices almost immediately and are so successful at it. I know very few people who have been unsuccessful in attempting their own practice. I think largely because if they're an older person choosing to go to law school, they really have a goal and they're really committed to it right from the outset.
How hard is that little 3-day test? I haven't mastered it, but how hard is that test?
That test is the hardest bar admission test in the United States, so it's quite hard. You have to be up to speed on 13 different subjects simultaneously. You have to be able to write both exercises, much like what you would do in practice, and also essay exams. And then you have to answer 200 multiple choice questions that are almost like mini legal problems in and of themselves. So it's quite hard, but if you graduate and have made the effort to master the material, it's doable. We know that if you graduate with a GPA of 75 or better in law school, you have virtually a 100% probability of passing the bar. But you have to not have a lot of other things going on in your life, and you have to strive for mastery, not necessarily just getting by. And it gets harder the further you're out from law school. And I know that you had a lot of other opportunities open to you.
And so, stamina. One thing I noticed when I took the bar exam is that on the third day I was exhausted. Does stamina play into this?
Sure. In fact, we recommend people have some kind of fitness routine during the time that they're studying for the bar exam, because it is a physical ordeal. I can remember when I took it, the second day was all the 200 multiple choice questions. I had to be helped down the stairs because I was so exhausted. It is an ordeal.
Now let's talk about law school and stamina, because you have the classes, you're thinking, when I was in class, my brain had to be on full blast. Does stamina play into that?
Yeah. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And you have to have a plan. We now have for incoming students an Introduction to Legal Studies class, which I think is just outstanding. It's before school starts. It tells you exactly how to study in law school to succeed. And if you will simply follow that pattern, which is not easy, it takes some time, but if you will follow that pattern, you are almost assured of succeeding. But yes, it's a tremendous amount of work.
For the people that want to go, let's say there are people out there that always wanted to be a lawyer. They take the class. What advice would you give them?
Take the class, the Introduction to Legal Studies class?
Introduction with Legal Studies.
Well, there is a method, and law school is unlike other education because you don't just read a textbook that tells you Columbus, quote unquote, discovered America in 1492, and then you take an exam and you give back all this information. In law school, you're learning principles of law, and then you're expected to take it and apply it to a totally new situation. What we recommend is when you're reading these cases in advance of class, that you do, we call it briefing the case, give the essential elements of the case, but also then you use that to try to predict what you're supposed to learn out of that. And then when you're in class, you can update that prediction based upon what you learn. That virtually becomes your outline to study for the exams. You can use your corrected predictions to make an outline of what you need to learn in that subject matter. And if people put the time in ahead of time to think through, okay, what am I supposed to extract from this case, they're much more likely to remember it because it's become their information. So that's a very long-winded recommendation.
You know, what you're mentioning is a lot of analytical work, but writing, how important is actual writing in law school?
Well, that's what lawyers do. Lawyers do a lot more writing than they do speaking. A very, very small proportion of lawyers actually appear in court with any regularity. Most of what lawyers do is written work. So that's our objective, or one of our objectives in law school, is to develop better people's writing skills. For the most part, they're not getting the experience in writing in high school and undergraduate work that they really need to have. So we now give them assignments where they have to write something, get feedback, rewrite it, get feedback, rewrite it, because a good lawyer will never submit their first draft. They work on it and work on it. I know when I have writer's block, my answer always is, write something, and then you can go back and work on it.
How can people find out more about the law school, or for those who are interested in attending and are not sure that this is for them, what informational sessions are available for them?
Well, there are a number of sources of information. First, we have a website that has thousands of pages of information, and the obvious website is www.sjcl.edu. We generally have what's called Law School 101 once a month. That is a session where one of the faculty comes in and describes what law school is like, and then we have a panel, usually of 3 current students, explaining what law school's really like, since they think we as professors have been out of law school so long we really don't remember what it's like. And it's also the case that people can call to the law school anytime and someone will talk to them. Either the admissions officer will talk to them, or one of the faculty, or I'd be happy to talk to them. They can approach the law school any way that they feel comfortable.
And along those lines, talk about your student body population. Are you looking at increasing it? I mean, do you have certain goals you want to meet within the next 3-4 years?
Sure. The student population right now is about 170. It has been as high as about 230. The most we would ever want it to be is about 300. We're not interested in being a massive law school, pumping out graduates who can't get jobs. We're trying to balance the needs of the community. But absolutely, for me personally, I'm concerned that in this geographic area, fairly soon there are not going to be enough people graduating from law school to fill the jobs that are available.
And that's contrary to what we've been seeing in the media. I was reading something a couple of months ago that said there are lawyers standing in line because they can't find a job. But what you're telling us is, no, not in Fresno.
Well, that is changing somewhat nationwide. Most of the press now is beginning to say that there's a slight increase slowly in the number of jobs in law. But it's never been the case in Fresno. I guess because of geographical isolation and because people go away to law school and then don't want to come back, there are jobs available right now. In fact, we have jobs posted on our placement board right now and no one to send to them. So it's quite different here.
Talk about how you feel when you see one of your ex-students in the newspaper. They've done something good and they're getting congratulated on TV. I mean, how does that make you feel?
Me? Well, those are my kids.
And the reason I ask you is because, you really bond with your students. I mean, when I was there for 4 years, I mean, I liked coming to your class and I liked seeing you
Well,
and
we
saying
had a
hello.
good time in class.
Yes.
It was fun. I mean, I'm not teaching now, and I miss that. But there are other things I need to be doing for the school, and I just don't have, there's only 24 hours in the day. I can't do them all. So
How is the clinic going? I remember the...
you're reading my mind.
Yeah, I am. There's something with the studio. How is the clinic going?
The clinic, it's called the New American Legal Clinic. It's an immigration clinic. It's doing extremely well. It has helped hundreds of people. We have done naturalizations. We do U visas. We do family-based immigration. We've done some asylum cases. We've actually represented a couple of unaccompanied minors and won, and now have a contract to represent 5 more with the state of California. And I'm hoping that those people will come to the clinic fairly soon so we can get started. We do workshops all over the San Joaquin Valley on the legal bases to immigrate. We're not involved in policy issues. There are plenty of other organizations that do that. I've always been concerned, however, that there aren't enough organizations that do free work for specific individuals. So that's what we concentrate on. And it's been very successful. The students love it, just love it, because they get to actually help people, which is why most of them went to law school in the first place. I don't see applications that say, I want to go to law school so I can drive a big car. I mean, and virtually everyone that applies has a really heartfelt motivation for going to law school.
That's interesting. So you have a facility that's open to the public where they can come and seek services.
Absolutely. It's free for low-income individuals. Absolutely, completely free. And that came about because the Department of Homeland Security identified Fresno as one of the 5 worst cities in the United States for immigration assistance fraud. So
people committing fraud, defrauding others.
Taking their money and saying they would provide them with certain immigration services that they either did not provide or provided poorly. And that leads me into a caution, because with the new executive order, there are, as of yet, no regulations as to what that's going to look like and what someone will have to do to qualify. If someone is telling you that they can get you that status now, or they can get you in line so you have a priority and they want you to give them a lot of money, don't do it.
So the fraud is still continuing to this
It's
day.
already started. It's already started.
Speaking of that, do you envision the law school being involved in more of these type of services? If it's not immigration, then something else?
Well, we would love to, had we the resources. The one I'm particularly interested in right now is called a modest means incubator. In the Central Valley, probably 50% or more of the population can't afford a lawyer when they have a legal problem. A modest means incubator is the same kind of legal services, primarily probably in family law, for people whose income is above the poverty level, but is below, say, 200 or 250% of the poverty level. We're seeking funding right now for that kind of a clinic. And hopefully over the next few years we'll be able to develop it. It is another opportunity for students to get actual clinical experience.
Your law school is a nonprofit as well, correct? So if there are people who want to donate, that's tax deductible?
Oh, absolutely. It's a 501c3.
And it's run by a board and all that other stuff.
Yep.
Do people not, I mean, I was surprised when I first learned that. Is that the kind of feedback you get from the community, that they didn't know you're a nonprofit?
No, not very often. It's very much a nonprofit. It is run by a board. Very, very influential people on the board take it very seriously. We have had to, if this means anything to anybody, absolutely clean financial and financial aid audits for years and years and years and years and years.
Congratulations on that.
Well, that's the right thing to do, so.
Tell us a little bit more about the law school. So, you know, in 10 years, if you had a crystal ball, what would the law school look like?
Well, in 10 years, the law school will be where it is now. It will have a separate library building. It will be ABA accredited. It will be approximately 300 students. It will have an agricultural law professor, probably a water law professor. It will have probably one more, maybe two more clinics to provide services in the community because they're desperately needed. And I probably won't be there because I've been there for a while.
Reading in law school. How does someone, do you have to enjoy, let me rephrase the question, do you have to enjoy reading to be successful in law school?
I would say yes, because so much of your study is reading. If that's intolerable, you're not going to have a pleasant experience. If you find that you hate reading those cases, since that's what you'll be doing all of your practicing life, it's probably not the best career choice for you. It's amazing how many people take their law school degree and use it in a different environment. We have people that have served on the Water Resources Control Board. The current Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services responsible for implementing the Affordable Care Act is a grad of the law school. Just amazing things that people take their law degree and use those skills in all kinds of environments.
Is that common? I mean, is it common for someone who got the law degree, practiced law a little bit, and then all of a sudden they move on to something completely different?
Well, it's completely different on its face, but in reality, the analytical skills that you learn can be used anywhere. I would say that nationwide, probably at least 10% of people use their law degree some way other than practicing law. Now, in other areas, a very significant percentage over the last few years have had to use their law degree in some other environment. We've been fortunate that's not been the case, but there's probably a greater proportion using it in other environments than there was, say, 15 years ago.
So talk a little bit about some of the graduates. I mean, you've got graduates that have been judges, DAs. I mean, tell us about that.
Well, there are 38 judges, administrative law judges. We have a federal court judge. I had to completely stay out of the recent district attorney's race because both of the individuals were graduates of San Joaquin and in fact graduated in the same year from San Joaquin.
Interesting.
So I thought that was fascinating. Many of the DAs in the surrounding area over the years have been San Joaquin graduates. Some of the biggest names in criminal law and personal injury law in the Fresno area are San Joaquin graduates. People do every conceivable thing. In-house counsel for the appropriate name now is Valley Children's Hospital is a San Joaquin graduate. It always is amazing to me. People come in, and you may well remember this, come into the first night of torts class, and all I can see is terror across the board. And we get into the cases and start working on them, and there'll be people in the back rows hiding behind the books when I'm trying to call on people. And then they graduate and just fly. They just, even after the first year, we put people through moot court, and they're terrified of having to get up before a panel of judges and speak. And when they survive that, it's sort of like, I can do this. And what happens is people discover that they're capable of doing far more than they ever believed that they could do. And that's a really wonderful thing to see.
For the people who want to go to law school, what advice would you give them? If they're in college now, let's say they're at Fresno State or some other college, and they're thinking about going to law school, what advice would you give them?
Oh, probably advice they don't want to hear. Take courses that require you to write, and ideally give you the opportunity to write, have your writing critiqued, and then rewrite. Take a course in logical reasoning. As far as your major is concerned, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Take something that you love, that you're going to do well in. Ideally does involve some writing, but you don't have to have a degree in political science or criminology to go to law school. We've had people be successful in law school as music majors, anthropology majors, nursing, every conceivable major that you could consider.
We are running out of time this week on the program. Briefly, is it ever too late for someone to go to San Joaquin College of Law?
I think our oldest graduate was 72 when he graduated, and he went on to practice law for 15 years.
Incredible.
It
incredible.
was. It was.
We are out of time this week. Believe it or not, the time flew again, like last time when you were on the show. We have so much fun when we're together talking about law school stuff. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. To the volunteer crew that made this and every production possible, thank you. Our director for the broadcast is Cesar Campos. Thank you to our audience members listening to 90.7 FM KFSR Fresno or to CMAC, Comcast 93, AT&T 99. Special thanks to our guest this week, Ms. Jan Pearson, Dean of the Law School, San Joaquin College of Law. I'm a grad, alumni. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Tune in next week to a new edition.